right, so this is the very first card that we are going to work on, and we are actually going to stamp this with coffee archival ink. The next card we're going to do this one, and we're going to do it with black. So I just wanted you to see the difference between how the images could look depending on what colors you use to stamp it. This one is a little bit close to the no line watercoloring, which is where you use a really, really light color to stamp it so that you have the pattern, but once the image is complete, it looks like there are no lines. It looks like you free-handed it, but you didn't. So I am stamping on my watercolor cardstock. You always want to use watercolor cardstock when you are watercoloring because it can handle the water. Now, I stamped it on the wrong side of the paper. When you get watercolor, there is a smooth side and there is a bumpy side. That one I stamped on the bumpy side. And because my ink pad is a little bit on the drier side, there was not enough ink to go into the texture of the paper. So let's do this again. There we go. And you want to make sure to give nice even pressure all the way around your image. Make sure it gets good contact with your paper. And I always like to hold it in the center like that so that I know that it's not going to move on me. So there we go. So now our image is stamped. And the first step that we're going to do for this one is we are going to mask off where I want it to stay this color. I want this to have a little bit of an antique look to it, but there's a few places that I want to be a little bit more of a brighter white. In this particular card, I only did the fur parts on the hat, but for this showing you, I'm also going to do his beard, the fur on his jacket, and then a little bit of the white parts on the candy cane, just so that you see what the difference is once the cards are completed, because I do use different mediums on those areas. Like the fur on his hat, I used some glue and some Fun Flock, and then on his beard and, sorry, the fur on his jacket and his beard, I used Fun Flock, and then on his hat, I used some stickles. So I want to make sure that you can see the difference. And I keep getting bubbles in here, so if you have bubbles in your masking fluid, make sure to pop them with a pin. I just have a little thumbtack here. That totally works. Safety pin would work, just something sharp. Because we want to make sure, and any tiny, like micro bubbles are fine, but I was getting some fairly big ones. But what we want to do is, after we've popped them, we want to go back in and just make sure that those areas are completely covered. And there's one more in his hat here. Another one right up in here. There we go. All right, so you can see that those areas are like a milky color, kind of like school glue. You need to let them completely dry before you go any further. When they are dry, they're going to be translucent. You're going to be able to see through them, but it's going to protect those areas, and we can do any painting we want right over top of it, and it's not going to affect any of those areas that we have masked off. So the masking fluid I was using there was Nuvo masking fluid. There's a lot of different companies that make it. It doesn't need to be this brand. They pretty much all work exactly the same. So we're going to set that aside to dry. And once it's completely dry, we'll be back and we can start our watercoloring.